Hey there, folks. It's Mike Tramp from Wide Line, and you are watching CMS TV.
Street, and she's all alone on a bedside of town. 'Cause there was a little boy that she loved with all her heart, but he's far away with another girl, and now she's searching for a friend, just to hold her when she cries in her lonely nights, where no one seems to care, in her lonely nights.
It is CHRIS Akin Presents, and I, of course, am Chris Akin, and joining us on the show today is I dare say, a legend at this point. Certainly has the big volume of music that is out there, and he's revisiting his probably most known to you guys and most famous work with White Lion. A new album called Songs of White Lion, Volume 2. Volume 1 was released not that long ago as well. The new one comes out on August the 23rd, and here to talk all about it is the man himself, Mr. Mike Tramp. Mike, how are you?
Great to be here. Great to be here.
Excellent. Well, Mike, I got to ask you right off the start, man, and I've interviewed you, I don't know, 6 or 7 times at this point, and I have to admit that I'm surprised that you're doing the Songs of White Lion, because you've told me numerous times in the past about you didn't want to rely on your past, that you thought you were creating much stronger work, as you went along. And I agree with you. Stuff like Rock and Roll Circus and Cobblestone Street and Capricorn, these are all great records. What is it that's going on with you now where you're willing to revisit this music? Because for a long time, you kind of weren't.
Just as I thought everything was going well. Man, I tell you what, you hit it right on the nail. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you about Volume 2 or even maybe a little bit of Volume 1 as the interview progresses if it wasn't that this seems to be the way the world works. I mean, let me try to see if I can do like the real edited version of this.
Sure.
But when in September or August of 1991, I call off the band and close it, pack it up, bury it, no more.
Right.
Start Freak of Nature, releases 3 albums with the band. And then in 95, put that in a box, gaffer tape, everything, put it away, start my solo career with the Capricorn album in 1997. Everything made sense to me at that time. I'd now been in 3 bands. I'd given my heart and soul and everything that I had to those bands. Now it wasn't so much about me being solo for the purpose of just being the boss about everything. It just did not make sense to create a 4th band. What would that sound be when all I sort of had at this time was just me? Not that just me isn't enough, but the sound of Mike Tramp as a solo artist. On all the solo albums and the things you mentioned, that is the sound of me.
Right.
That is my DNA. That is the equivalent of what I brought possibly in an earlier, younger version when I sat in front of Vito Bratta with my acoustic guitar, and Vito sat with the Strat, and we started writing the White Lion songs. What I was bringing halfway to the table was the sound of my solo albums.
Right.
And Vito would pick them up from there if I was starting the melody, or you know, if I wasn't singing onto his riff. But if I was starting a song, that's what I would be bringing. So returning to that after Freak of Nature was the most natural thing.
Right on.
But I realized already when I went out on my first solo tour in America in 2000 that I was not going to have an easy time getting rid of White Lion.
Right.
Because there was several shows on that first tour that were announced as White Lion. And I tell you, that was damn hard for me going up there on stage with in lack of better words and respect to the man that I hold so high, Tom Petty, walking up there on stage with my version of the Heartbreakers.
Right.
Of course, no form of playing any form of White Lion or anything like that. And seeing half of the audience expecting me to come back, you know, somehow playing White Lion, and then me coming out there playing something different. And he would continue with that. And by the time I'd done my third solo album, I had actually been tested in how strong was I about carrying on with a solo career.
Sure.
Because now people start whispering in my ear, man, you know, if you put a new version of White Lion together, when I say a new version, because everybody already then knew that there were no chance of a reunion already at that time. So people would be, man, oh, you know, put a new version together and go out there. And I listened, and I started looking out at how I could do that.
Right.
And we started, you know, playing some festivals in Europe. We started doing, you know, 2 American tours and stuff like that, only really to discover that the demand wasn't that great. And I'm saying that in all honesty. I don't mind saying that. It wasn't like I was being, you know, ripped down from the stage and the world was now becoming a better place because I was bringing back the music of White Lion.
Right.
And then I also noticed that I was actually in the middle of creating a band that was not representing or reproducing the sound of White Lion. I was basically starting a new band. I wanted the band to sound like UFO. I wanted the band to sound like Journey. I wanted to have the big keyboard, et cetera, et cetera. So I was actually going against what I was starting out to do.
Right.
And you know, 40 years later, I called that off. And then now I had been back up in the hard rock again. Mm-hmm. So for the next 2 albums under the banner of Mike Tramp, they were called Mike Tramp and the Rock and Roll Circus.
Right.
And also, this is, you know, I've never had a chance to really talk about this because nobody brings it up. Most people are not aware of those albums. But I actually thought I was making a new band.
Okay.
Even though this was my full creation, these were my written songs. It was everything about me. But the guys that I'd gotten in to do this albums were friends of mine. Klaus, the bass player, had played in that version of White Lion that I created. Mm-hmm. Soren Anderson was coming in there to engineer and produce the albums with me. And it just were 2 damn great records.
Yeah.
And it felt really well. But there's something in the water in Denmark that prevents people from starting bands. It's a safety system. It's everything. I mean, this would take another show to say.
Sure.
Or to explain that. So once I knew that, before I walked down the aisle and said yes, I said no. And I closed down the thing. Mm-hmm. And there would go a year. And then in one way or another, would climb back into the room and start completely from scratch with Cobblestone Street.
Right.
That has taken my music back down to the rawest form, back to the streets of Copenhagen in the 60s, when I was given an acoustic guitar and I was sitting and listening to all the hippies playing Dylan and Neil Young and Danish folk music.
Right.
And that is my pure upbringing and DNA of songwriting. So Cobblestone Street was kind of like, okay, now I start from the beginning again, and nothing, and I mean nothing, is going to get me off the track.
Right.
And here we are.
Right on. Well, and dare I say, Cobblestone Street is probably your best effort that you've done, in my opinion. I love that record just because it is so different from what you've done in the past. I mean, it really, and not different, I guess, but it really is. You can tell your heart's on your sleeve on that record, which I personally appreciated that to no end, man. It's just great stuff.
I know. I mean, and I appreciate you saying that, because it's one of those basic of what I've just been saying for the last 5 minutes. I only need to say that because there's so many people that raises the question mark, even though they're in the long run do not affect my life or my decisions. I do make the decisions, but I am being affected by it, because as Cobblestone Street would lead to Museum, and Museum would lead to Nomad, and Nomad would lead to Maybe Tomorrow, and Maybe Tomorrow would lead to Stray from the Flock. So would the people in the audience crying out for Lady in the Valley and
Right.
Wait and When the Children Cry. And little by little, I managed to because on all those albums, when I toured, I was only touring as a solo artist with an acoustic guitar.
Right.
And then I started adding some of these Big White Lion songs in the acoustic version. I mean, one of the one of the great things about those songs, they had been written that way, so it wasn't like it was a big deal bringing them back to that. But even though that I've written those songs, I do feel that when I walked on stage, I kind of at times felt like I threw the towel in the ring.
Yeah. That's interesting.
But it didn't help that every concert poster, every venue, I mean, I have collected every poster from every show that I've done the last 10 years. Every poster says the voice of White Lion or the good-looking guy from White Lion.
Nice.
How am I going to run away from that?
Right, of course not. Well, let's dig into the record a little bit, Mike. And the previous one too, Volume 1 and Volume 2, I guess, but we'll talk mostly about Volume 2. Obviously, these are new arrangements for each song. When you're doing them, as the guy that wrote all these songs, do you feel like you're recreating them, or do you feel like you're just giving each song a new flavor that you're more comfortable with?
Well, yes and yes. Let me start with the back. I mean, the whole point of, like, when I finally surrendered and saying, okay, I'm going to do the first album. And doing the first album, I didn't even think that I would ever hit the stage with these songs.
Okay.
And Marcus Nan, the guitar player, is obviously the key man to these two albums, because without him, these albums could not be made. Nobody can play like Vito Bratta, and nobody can play Vito Bratta in a different key.
Right.
Because I said to Marcus, a good friend of mine for 30 years, and we always knew that it was just about time whenever we would work together. I said to him, first of all, I'm asking you to learn Vito note for note, because if we're going to do it. Now, can you learn these songs in a different key? Because I'm not 27 anymore, and I would never be able to reproduce those vocals, but I also would not want to reproduce these vocals in 2023 and 24.
Right.
It made no sense for me. I'm also not bringing back the same clothes or the same hair when I walk on stage. There has to be 35 years of growth. I mean, even though this is a little bit of a joke, I mean, after 25 years, you know, when they bring back Indiana Jones, I mean, to make this movie legit, you have to show that he's also 25 years older for the movie to make sense.
Right, right.
You know, so when I walk out on stage and I sing these songs and I tell the stories, the whole package comes with everything that I've done for the 35 years, including the stories of how the songs were written and everything that's gone in between. That all that stuff goes into the vocal track when I go into my studio and I sing these songs. First of all, I don't have to look at the lyrics.
Right.
I don't have to think about how the melody goes. It sits in my spine. It's my DNA. So I'm actually able to go in there and throw my soul into it. I didn't do that, regardless of how many people like the original albums. I went in there and did something that I did for the first time. So now I'm definitely the Monday morning quarterback coming back and saying, of course I know where to throw the ball. Of course I know how to hit that curveball. I mean, everything is about the knowledge and the experience that I have when I go in and do these things.
Right on. Were any of these songs, you know, visiting them again? And I mean, I have a feeling they don't go too far from you ever, but were any of these hard to reimagine? Were there any that no matter how you tried it, it just didn't feel right, taking it out of the original sound of it to you? You know, and
yeah, no, I mean, of course. I mean, I can't exactly remember what track, but there are some tracks that we just knew would not work, even when we just messed around with them a little. And I would also add to it that had it been then that Vito Bratta and Mike Tramp was getting together for the sake of rock and roll, not for the sake of a White Line reunion tour. Mm-hmm. And maybe Vito Bratta and Mike Tramp was going into the studio in a similar way Robert Plant and Jimmy Page did a long time ago. I'm positive that we would be messing around with the songs a bit. I'm positive then Vito would not just go in and just, go, on autopilot, that he would go, man, I never thought I would be getting a second chance to do this. I always wanted to do that this way, and so and so.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Now, I got to ask you, and you brought up Vito a couple of times. What is it about you and him that, well, let me put it another way. There's a zillion other bands that you came up with at, in 86, 87, 85, that era, that are still out there today, but it's really one guy and new guys, and they've been able to do it. They're able to continue on. For you and Vito, everybody holds you two as a unit. They've never really fully opened the door for you personally to move forward and call it White Lion or call it anything else. Why do you think it is that they don't give you the same courtesy that they do so many other bands that have moved on from their original lineup?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for not just asking that question, but bringing it out there. Nobody has done that before. I mean, right now, Sammy is out there doing the Best of Both Worlds tour with Michael Anthony. And of course, the wish was for them to have Alex Van Halen with them. And Sammy has been out there with Dave doing their show. And many people would go, well, Van Halen is Eddie. And so and so. So when you mention this about Mike Tramp and Vito Bratta and White Lion, a band that in reality only were so big, mm-hmm. I don't know. I think, maybe some people got nothing else to say, but I also say, and I just let it go in one ear and out the other one. People come to me and say, Vito who? After the show. So you know what? We don't pay attention to this. Right. It is what it is. I'm out there playing clubs. I'm out there playing small theaters. In Europe, we play some festivals. We're playing some festivals in America too. It is what it is. After this many years, I finally, look in the mirror and say, hey, in case you didn't know, your job and what pays the rent or supporting your kids is rock and roll. You that's what you do. That's your job. That's how you survive. I have played professional music for 48 years.
Wow. Yeah, and I mean the surprising thing, I think, when people, if they do something as simple as just even look at your Wikipedia, White Lion is only a small part of your career. I mean, the bulk of your career is the solo. I mean, you've got 20 solo records or whatever.
I've done 14 solo albums, and I have a little break after I'm done with your interview. And right now, I mean, my studio's right behind me and things like that. I mean, I have my next English solo album already written and demoed, and I'm bouncing the tracks down so I can finalize the lyrics while I'm on the tour with the you know, in America with the White Lion stuff. And then, you know, sometime next year, you know, I'll record that. So that continues that way. The problem is that a lot of people don't believe that they can book me in the club without adding White Lion. The positive thing now of going out and doing the White Lion thing is more and more become aware and familiar with my solo album. So I'm taking it as a blessing in disguise.
Right on. Do you I'm going to use the word regret, but it's not really what I want to say. Are you frustrated that more people that definitely loved White Lion, and I put myself right on the top of that list, but I do appreciate the solo stuff. Are you frustrated that people didn't gravitate to the solo stuff and arguably have missed a lot of music? I know you love it as a passion, but I think they've missed a lot of music that they would have loved as well because they got hung up on the, you know, just the logo on the CD. You see what I'm saying?
I'm not just seeing it, I'm hearing it, bro. Yeah, I'm frustrated, but you know, it's only just recently that I basically realized that all my solo albums have in reality not been released in the United States.
True. So
when I go out there on each of those albums and do about 35, 40 shows, maybe I sell half a box to a box of CDs a show. So maybe in reality, once that tour is done, I've sold 1,000 albums. So there's 1,000 people in the US that owns the album. And then there's maybe 150 who was ordered on the internet from Europe. So we got a long way to go.
Right.
And so it's not to say that there won't come a second surge of releasing these albums in a better way for the American audience, within the limits of what can be done and so on. So I'm, of course, 100% sure that most of fans of White Lion and that has grown to the Mike Tramp world will love these albums. It's just that it's not been in front of them. There's no record stores anymore.
True.
So everything becomes harder and harder and harder. So unless I knock on the door and saying, you don't really have a choice, here's my new album.
That is true. And it really is, you know, frustrating now, especially within the Spotify generation. It would be nice if they set it up somehow so that somebody searched for White Lion, that the Mike Tramp records all came up with it, as it should be, because it's the same writer.
Yeah, because every time I look for something on the internet, I get like junk mail for 50 other things they attach to that. I don't understand. You know, I was looking for Viagra, but then suddenly somebody wants to sell me motor oil.
Keep your motor running, as they say, right? Nice. Well, Mike, are you planning to tour and play the songs of White Lion, or are you going to tour as Mike Tramp and also play some songs of White Lion?
We're starting a 45 show tour on August 23rd in Las Vegas and finishing on the 24th of October at the Whiskey in Hollywood and everywhere in between. So this is going to be a massive tour. We're reaching a big part of the country, and this is our second tour. We toured last year, so we'll also have a sort of a good inclination after the tour of, did we build something, or was it just, fast food drive-through?
Right. Certainly. Well, how did it go on the first run?
It went excellent. It went excellent. I sometimes reveal a little too many secrets when I do interviews, because I'm just much more comfortable with the truth than trying to come up with, with stuff that's not true. The question is, if it's too late to build something that can grow. It's not like, we're getting great radio play with the songs from the new album and stuff like that. In the old days, when White Lion were getting great radio play, the next day, the manager from AC/DC called and offered us 3 months with the band on the road. Now it's just statistics. Mm-hmm. So you're trying to see, where it is. So in reality, we're getting back down to the old-fashioned way of campaigning. Get out there, play the music for the people.
Right. Do you like it better that way instead of having the big, obviously you like having the big machine and making a ton of money doing it, but at the same time, doing it the grassroots way as you are now really leaves it all onto you creatively, where you can do whatever you choose creatively instead of being forced to, every night playing When the Children Cry with a special intro because that's what the record company wants. Right?
Yeah, well, it's just one of those things. I would be perfectly happy if this lasted for many years and we could do a tour like this maybe every second year, maybe if every year was too much, every second year. And I'm quite comfortable going out playing clubs and stuff like that. I don't even look towards the bigger stage or anything else. And right now, I just want it all sort of to be balanced and make sense. And things could end up being a different when, the thing is like, I've sort of made it into like 3 boxes. I have my English solo album, Mike Tramp, and that one. Then I have Mike Tramp's White Lion. And back in Denmark, where I live, I also have over the past couple of years, I've released 2 albums in my native tongue,
right? And
that appeals to an audience that have followed me in a different way. So each of them strengthen the my interest and the passion from when I jumped to the other thing. If I was to be, Mike Tramp's White Lion 365, I burn out because, I can't go any further creative with that. The songs are already written. I've already done the new versions of it. I've sort of hit the wall. There's only really the live performance left.
Right. Makes sense.
My solo albums, I already know, besides I've already written and sort of it's already halfway done, with the new one. And I already know from my songwriting, there are many, many more albums to come in that way. It's just a matter of, I do understand that in many ways, I'm almost writing and recording the albums for myself. Right. And then hoping there also is a bit of an audience that like to share this with me.
Right on. Well, they definitely should be sharing Songs of White Lion, Volume 2, out on August the 23rd. And, Mike, where's the best place that we could tell people to go to actually buy the records? And I say buy, not just stream. It helps you guys a whole lot more if you you purchase than if you just stream it for 1/zillionth of a
Yeah,
cent.
I mean, you know, at least this time, both those albums are available in America. You know, I mean,
Sure.
I don't even know where there's a record store, but they're available on the net in the U.S. So, you know, you don't have to go abroad there. The albums are, of course, also on sale, you know, at the shows where I gladly will sign the CD or the vinyl, et cetera, et cetera. You know, if you want the album, it shouldn't be that hard to find.
Sure. And they can get it at MikeTrampOfficial.com as well, right? I believe.
I'm sure there's a link there, you know, websites. Who the hell go to website these days? I mean, go to Mike Tramp Officials, you know, like Facebook. You know, I mean, that's where people live anyway.
Right on. Well, one more time, it is Songs of White Lion, Volume 2. Volume 1 is out there as well, but Volume 2 comes out on August the 23rd. And Mike, this has been a lot of fun, man. Thanks so much for joining me here on Chris
It's
Akin
been my
Presents.
pleasure. It's been my pleasure.
Time to wonder, and there will be no crying, there will be no lying, there will be no dying.
This episode of the CMS Network is brought to you by our sponsor, Blackout Coffee. If you are a coffee lover, you will love what they are selling over at Blackout Coffee. Make sure you get yourself some. The only thing woke about this company is the drinker of the coffee, because it gives you quite a jolt. I am a personal fan of the Brutal Awakening Dark Roast, but everybody's a little bit different. Make sure you get what is your favorite today. Go to blackoutcoffee.com. Use the promo code CHRIA20 to save 20% on your first order. It's that simple. So one more time, blackoutcoffee.com. That is the link, or use the full link if you're going to shop around. That is scrolling on the bottom, and get yourself some of the best coffee that is out there today. blackoutcoffee.com.